company to this huge monster now, meddling in geopolitics around the world. And what's its role in Ukraine?
Well, my understanding is that BLACKROCK has taken possession of the bulk of Ukraine's agricultural land, and then probably a lot of other assets. Well, they're doing the same. They're doing the same thing. They're allocating capital to where they're going to be subsequently extracting profits.
Do you think that, we saw the announcement of the ceasefire and the resumption of intelligence and arms to Ukraine? How do you think that is going to pan out?
I'm sorry, Sean, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so in recent news story has been that there's a ceasefire coming, and that America's resumed arms and intelligence to Ukraine. How do you think this will play out? Will this lead to the war being stopped, or are the European interests going to try and keep it going and send troops from here? I mean, Keir Starmer is talking about conscription.
I think that the war is probably not going to be ending so soon. The Russians have been very explicit that they will not accept ceasefire unless Ukraine completely renounces on NATO membership, becomes a neutral nation, holds new elections, and disarms. And I doubt very much that Zelensky is going to accept those conditions. And unless he does, the Russians are going to continue grinding them down. Russians have been very consistent and explicit about what their objectives in Ukraine are, and they have taken the Ukraine as a threat, as an existential threat, which they need to remove, and they're in the process of removing it. So they have no rationale for stopping. This would only allow Ukrainians to regroup and rearm and prepare for further attacks and further warfare after the ceasefire ends. So I think it's just going to continue unless Ukrainian government makes those concessions, and I think we can be pretty certain that they will not.
You've been asked whether you think that Keir Starmer will do conscription here or will send troops to Ukraine from England.
Okay, so as it is, the British military counts about 70,000 troops in all. And I think that the military math says that they could spare, I think, tops about 4,000 to send to Ukraine at this time. That's basically nothing. The French could maybe send a bit more, the Germans a bit more, the Poles could send some, but basically if you took all of the NATO members together, it would be very difficult to come up with 50,000 troops. And they're not battle hardened, they're not really ready to fight. And so 50,000 troops in Ukraine, where Russia still has escalatory dominance, where Russia has the control of the skies above Ukraine, the airspace, right? This is meaningless. They would simply be slaughtered in a few months' time. So why would they even bother? Why would they do this to begin with? They won't and they wouldn't unless the United States provided a security guarantee. And that means that if British, French, NATO troops, whatever you wanna categorize them as, if they come under Russian attack, then the United States would come in and intervene and go kill the Russians for us, right? I don't know that the Americans will do it, and even if they did, it still wouldn't matter. The Russians still have escalatory dominance and still control the airspace above Ukraine, and without that, you simply can't win. the I think that a credible strategic reason to do this would be to use those troops as a tripwire, and to say, if the Russians attack our men, then we invoke Article 5 and we rally the whole of NATO, everybody, to go to war. And then you start calling for martial law. You start with the obligatory conscription. You start swelling the ranks of the militaries in Europe, and you start doing what Napoleon did, what Hitler did with Operation Barbarossa, and you hope that by continuing to do that, by continuing to bleed Russia dry, that you're going to weaken it enough that someday you're going to be able to regime change it. And Vladimir Putin is not an immortal man. He's not going to be in charge forever. And so what the Western ruling establishment is doing is they want to keep the war going. They don't care how many people will die. They want to keep the war going to weaken Russia as much as they can, so that one day they could regime change it, that they could stage a color revolution or a coup. And again, the only reason to do this, ultimately, is that resource wealth. And then, let's not forget the Russian population, because, you can't extract that wealth without people doing the hard work. So you basically end up enslaving the population. So what you're doing is you're hoping to turn Russia into your own colony. That's the end game.
Yeah, Keir Starmer's not acting out of kindness here, folks. It's all about the resources. These people are absolute monsters. We've got just under 15 minutes left with Alex.
Yeah, but Sean,
Krainer.
just forgive me for interrupting, but it's not Keir Starmer, because before Keir Starmer there was Rishi Sunak, and before him there was Liz Truss, and before her there was Boris Johnson, and before him there was Theresa May, right, and so on. The policy is always the same. The policy doesn't change. These people are stand-ins, they're puppets, and they're doing the bidding of something else behind the throne, someone else. And that's who's running the show. And then we also have Liz Truss on record when she was on Steve Bannon's War Room show. And she said, when I was the prime minister, I thought I would be able to enact all these reforms and change things and blah, blah, blah. And then I found out that actually the country is not run by the prime minister. The country is run by the Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility, right? So that's the people that I would have subjected to enhanced interrogation, to ask them what the hell is going on and what are you doing and why are you doing it.
Yeah, well said. And my friend Andrew Gold just interviewed Liz Truss, if people want to watch it, and he asked me for some questions to give to her, and he asked her about lobbying and who was in control, and she said a group of elite technocrats have co-opted the UK government. She admitted it. Group of elite technocrats.
Yes, except, she got that wrong. They're not elite, they're parasites.
Yeah, parasites, definitely. They are blood-sacrificing demonic entities. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left with Alex. All of his links are in the description box. I just put his X in the live chat, and get your final questions in, folks. So 60s DJ, could you ask Alex if he thinks this is a European power grab trying to build an EU army to compete with the US and China?
Yeah, I don't see it as competition with US and China. I think it's just still them trying to remain relevant and to project force to be able to continue to build, or at least maintain the empire in the region. Remember, the strategy, the geopolitical dimension of this strategy goes back to Halford Mackinder, who was the first one that I know of who formulated it explicitly. And it says, who controls Eastern Europe controls the heartland. Who controls the heartland controls the world island, being Eurasian landmass. And who controls the world island controls the world. And so, they want to make sure that Russia doesn't become the regional hegemon in Eastern Europe. So they want this mad rush to build up European armies and military industries is not to compete with China and the United States. It's to compete with Russia. That's the reason.
So, question for Misbehavior: why doesn't Russia just leave Ukraine if they want peace?
Well, because Ukraine has been NATO has been in Ukraine since 1991. They had the first they formalized the cooperation between NATO and Ukraine in 1997 with the Partnership on Distinct Cooperation, something under that. It was signed in Madrid in 1997. From 2014, since the illegal coup against the elected government in Ukraine, NATO has been going in like a Trojan horse through the open gates. And they've tripled over the following 8 years. They tripled the size of Ukraine's military. They've concentrated most of it in the Donbas with the clear intention to push out the separatist republics and to subjugate them by force. Also, in addition, they wanted Ukraine to join NATO. So their reward for, Ukraine's government reward for doing this would be to join NATO. If Ukraine became a member of NATO, it would be a direct existential threat to the United States. And just as the United States built the anti-ballistic missile facilities in Romania and then in Poland, they were going to build similar facilities in Ukraine. If they built missile launch facilities in Ukraine and they were going to build them in the vicinity of Kharkov and Chernobyl, they would be able to reach targets in Moscow in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not enough for Russians to mount a counterattack. If they have done this, that would constitute a strategic defeat for Russia because it would deprive them of their nuclear deterrent. And nuclear deterrent is the ability to respond to a nuclear attack, meaning they launch a nuclear attack against me, I immediately launch it against them. So that's the deterrent, because that's why they won't do it. But if you shorten that time to 5 minutes and then the Russians cannot respond, then you have strategically defeated Russia. And there were plans which were war gamed. There's testimony by people who participated in the war games. A name of the man who gave an interview to Tucker Carlson a few years ago was, slips my mind now. But anyway, this man gave a testimony to Tucker Carlson in an interview who said, we've been wargaming first strike nuclear attack against Russia. So what they were planning to do, they were planning to launch a first strike nuclear attack against Russia to be followed by land invasion through Ukraine, the Baltic states, and Poland. And the nuclear attack would have the effect of disabling Russia from organizing the defense. So this really was an existential threat to Russia. And then Biden administration, Joe Biden and Antony Blinken, told explicitly to Lavrov and Putin that we reserve the right to build those missile launch facilities in Ukraine, and we will not discuss this with you. We reserve that right, and we're planning to do this. So the Russians had the option of sitting back and letting NATO and the United States do this, or preempting them and disarming and denazifying Ukraine. So if you want a metaphor for that situation, suppose you had a neighbor who wanted to take your house, and across the street they start installing missile launchers and sniper guns aimed into your house. And they say, no, don't worry. This is not against you. We're not going to do anything. We just want to put these weapons here for whatever reason, And the fact that it's aimed into your kitchen, that we can shoot you in the head while you're having breakfast, well, don't worry about it because we would never do this. So what do? Do you take their word for it and you just relax in your home thinking that, no, they're never going to do it, even though for 200 years they've been trying to invade Russia and to dismember it? Or would you say, no, take those weapons down, or I'm coming into your house and I'm taking them down? If you want a different metaphor still, imagine if Russia was setting up military bases and missile launch facilities along Canada's border or Mexican border, aiming at targets in the United States. Would you expect the United States to just sit back and say like, oh, well, you know, that's across the border, none of our business? The situation is pretty clear. Unfortunately, the mainstream media in the West are concealing and distorting the picture about just right the amount that people cannot reach the sensible conclusions and understand the situation as it really is, rather than these, you know, Vladimir Putin is Hitler and so Volodymyr Zelensky is a hero and he's fighting for freedom and the Russians are terrible people. You know, it's propaganda, same propaganda that we had with Saddam Hussein, the same propaganda we had with Milosevic, the same propaganda we had with Gaddafi, and on and on and on and on and on. But it's always us instigating war. You know, all these countries are bad. They're the devils. They're the Hitlers. But it's always the Western powers that are instigating these wars and waging wars and laying the rest of the world to waste. And some people still haven't learned, and they still think that the media are telling them the truth, which I find is amazing. But I guess, you know, they say you can fool some people all of the time, and I guess they walk among us.
Yeah, the only time I watch BBC News is when I go to my parents' house, and I see these fake people with their makeup on, and they just look like caricatures of the news, like cartoon characters.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I have to say it's because now I haven't watched TV in about 15 years. I follow my news online, and you find so much expertise and so much superb quality analysis with context, with historical background, with detailed knowledge about geopolitics and politics and military and aspects and all of these, and you learn stuff. And then just a few weeks ago, you know, like I was watching French television because I wanted to understand what happened in the French elections. So, you know, just to get the lowdown of what had happened, I watched some French mainstream media channels, and I thought, oh my God, this is such Mac news. It's ridiculous. It doesn't, you know, the contrast now after 15 years of not following them, and now watching these empty suits speaking, you know, canned phrases and reading off a teleprompter. It's so obvious that it's worthless, and it, you know, it's there to propagandize and to distort and to mislead people and to lie to them. And you know, if you haven't watched them a while, it becomes very obvious.
And they're saying Putin is Hitler, but they're doing the same thing that Hitler attempted to do, you know, to topple Russia. They've not learned the lessons that Hitler learned the hard way and Napoleon learned the hard way. And for people who want to put this in the context of the Monroe Doctrine, so the Monroe Doctrine is a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy. It's based on the idea that the U.S. has a special responsibility for the Americas. So, for example, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. They weren't allowing that to happen. It was so close to America. It's as if the Chinese annexed Ireland or Mexico, started building military bases, aiming missiles in our direction. The US would be at war within minutes. And they knew this when they provoked Russia. They knew it would end up like this. It would be a bloodbath. But every way it turns, they make money off it.
Well, no, absolutely, because their purpose was to provoke Russia. And you know, this nuclear first strike strategy that I just explained minutes ago, this was considered in total seriousness. And the only thing that is not clear is whether the United States and NATO were actually planning to do this, or if they just wanted the Russians to be absolutely convinced that they were planning to do this. Because the Russians knew all about this. And there were, you know, whether accidental or deliberate intelligence leaks to put the Russians on alert that, hey, we're coming for you. the idea was to provoke Russia into responding. That was the idea. And then, you know, when they respond first, then you say like, oh, look, they're the aggressor. Then you get, you know, you get to stand on higher moral ground. But, you know, this all happened in Russia's neighborhood. It didn't happen in Western Europe because Russians were provoking Britain or Germany or France or the United States. This was the West provoking Russia. It's happening on their border. NATO has concentrated its troops and military arsenals along Russia's borders, not anywhere else. And they've added, how many? 13 new member nations, all of them in the direction of Russia's borders. And then, you know, you look at history, Operation Barbarossa in 1941, it was a Western coalition. It wasn't just Hitler. It was a Western coalition with participation of Sweden and Finland and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and Germany and Poland and Bulgaria, Croatia, Spain, Italy. It was, you know, 3 million troops. They weren't just German troops. Napoleon's invasion, same thing. It wasn't just the French. It was practically all of Europe cobbled together to go and invade Russia. And so what reasons do the Russians have to think that, no, this time around, just because they're pointing their guns at our heads, that doesn't mean that they mean anything mean by that. We can just relax and, you know, sing Kumbaya and enjoy life. And hopefully everything will be right.
Right, I've got 2 more questions. We're almost at the hour. I'll give you them all at once because I know you're a busy man. So the first question is, what is the fate of Zelensky? Is he going to end up like the Shah of Iran? And my other question is, what are you long and short in the markets right now?
Oh. So I think that Zelensky's life expectancy is going to come short. I think, you know, the only side that would want him alive are the Russians, because he knows where the bodies are buried. So I think that in Russian ideal scenario, they would get to arrest him, interrogate him, and run him through the courts so that everything comes out in black and white and on record. I think that Zelensky's puppet masters would prefer him dead if he no longer serves the purpose. So I think whether other Ukrainians are going to end his life or whether it's going to be, you know, CIA or MI6 or the Mossad, I don't know. But I think that he's nearing his end. What am I long and short? Dear God, you know, we just had a signal to go short U.S. equities, namely the Russell 2000 and the Nasdaq. Still a small long position in S&P 500. So it's a fresh reversal. So not all trading strategies are on the short side. Short crude oil, interesting. Long gold and silver. Long euro and pound against the dollar. That's another reversal that recently happened. It's been very reversal-ish last month, so it's a bit volatile out there in the markets. But yeah, basically, long gold, silver, natural gas, copper, coffee. Short the bonds, gilt, 30-year bond, 10-year treasury note, pund, long the FTSE, and that's what I got off the top of my head. We track about 200 markets, but I don't, you know, I couldn't tell you everything all at once.
Oh, look, really appreciate you spending time with us, Alex. Is there anything you'd like to say to the viewers in conclusion, where they can find you, follow you, read your Substack?
Well, first of all, I want to tell them, stand together, and we're winning this one. Remember, only a few months ago, we were all very, very nervous about the global pandemic treaty. What happened with that? Nothing. The full spectrum dominance of the projects for the new American centuries disintegrated as well. Everything they're trying to do, the new normal vanished, didn't it? Everything they're trying to accomplish is failing, and it's failing because they're facing the opposition of well-informed humanity that isn't buying their nonsense. So we're on the good track, and I think that we have the chance, as maybe the first generation in the history of humanity, to make the world a much better place. So we should just keep our heads on, pay attention, and keep going forward. People can find me on X. My handle is @NakedHedgie. For traders and investors, I publish a number of newsletters called iSystem Trend Compass. One of them is on Substack called iSystem Trend Compass, and then I publish a personal Substack called Alex Krainer Substack. So that's the 3 places where I'm most active.
Huge thank you for spending time with us, and we hope you can come back and give us some more information on this. You take care, my friend. I'm going to close the show.
With pleasure, Sean. Thank you very much for having me, and warm greetings to the audiences.
Thank you. Cheers. Take care, my friend.
Bye. Bye.
What a phenomenal guest, folks, and hopefully we can get him back. Put a 1 in the chat if you'd like Alex to come back and continue to keep us up to date on what's going on with geopolitics. Put a 2 in the chat if Alex can bog off. We have got Professor Hamamoto coming back tonight at 9 o'clock. Let me have a look. He's going to be talking about the Academy Awards, the Oscars, Hollywood, music industries exposed. Professor Hamamoto, part 6. We've got some more JFK guests inbound. I've been on the road for a few days. Huge thank you to all the people who came to the Farnham Literary Festival last night. Some people came and spoke to me, some of the viewers from that part of the country, and it was a really phenomenal atmosphere. We had a good laugh. And I've been on the road up to Liverpool, did a few podcasts in Liverpool. We had Maggie Oliver back on, the grooming gang exposer, with one of the survivors, as featured in the BBC documentary, The 3 Girls. And we also did old school Liverpool gangster Charlie Seeger, part 3. So that will be coming out soon. We've got David Macmillan. His next one's coming out soon. And we have got also Armed and Dangerous. Let me find it. It's 45 years in UK prison. John Hilton, part 2, coming out in the next couple of weeks. So loads of content coming your way, folks. I've been on the road for a few days. Now I'm back at headquarters. I'm going to start getting live streams coming out every night, if possible. When am I doing a talk in London? Nothing scheduled right now, but as soon as something comes in, I will post it across the socials. Exactly, Fifi. If only mainstream media would tell the truth. All it's telling us is the same lies they told us when Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The exact same media are telling us we got to boost the war, keep it going. They say it's supporting Ukraine. No, it's turning Ukraine into a bloodbath. Supporting Ukraine is wanting peace. And just because we're analyzing the geopolitics doesn't mean we're against Ukraine. My heart goes out the most to the people of Ukraine who've been sacrificed for the likes of BlackRock and vested interests. It's absolutely obscene, and I only believe that by shining a light on it and looking at the full root causes, we could stop these people from getting away from these things. Because back when it was Gulf War I, Gulf War II, all we had was the BBC and ITV here in this country, and everybody believed what those TV stations told us. But now we've got the internet, we've got these researchers, people like Scott Ritter, who was he was a weapons inspector who was offered millions by the Bush and Cheney crime families to say Saddam had WMD when he knew that they didn't, and he wouldn't do it, and he got criminalized, demonized. They tried to destroy him. We had him on a couple of months back, and these guys have lived it, and they eat and breathe it 24/7. I watch them on so many other channels, and I really enjoy doing this type of an interview. So we'll be back with more, folks. Fire Dog, good point. Weapons sent to Ukraine from America are being found with the Mexican cartels. That was Colonel Douglas, wasn't it? I heard that one. Was it on Tucker Carlson? Talking about how all this aid, it's all a scam. They're sending Ukraine all the crap weapons. The weapons have a shelf life, billing them to the taxpayer, and then Zelensky's selling them off to the Mexican cartels. All our expense, folks, while young people die on the battlefield, left high and dry with these crap weapons, so Zelensky can enrich himself. He's not acting in the best interests of the people. I bet if they did an election right now, he would end up like Mussolini. How Mussolini ended up. I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, folks. So take care. I'll be back at 9 p.m.